Many people think the Opium War began with a clash of interests. Britain wanted markets. China wanted to ban opium. Negotiations broke down, and war followed. But before that war, there was an earlier encounter. No opium, no gunboats, just a delegation carrying gifts and an emperor who simply couldn't understand what they were saying. The British saw this as a business negotiation. The Chinese emperor assumed they were simply another group of tribute bearers arriving from afar. One empire was expanding across the globe. The other had no idea what that expansion meant. 18th century Britain was in the grip of the Industrial Revolution. Factories were growing. Trading fleets were scouring the world for new goods and new markets. And among all the distant legends of the East, China remained the most fascinating of them all. Since the 17th century, the East India Company had been shipping Chinese goods back to Europe in vast quantities. Fine porcelain, silk, tea. British appetite for these things only deepened. But one problem refused to go away. China had almost no interest in anything Britain produced. Silver flowed eastward, ship after ship, and the trade deficit kept growing. For Britain, opening the Chinese market was no longer just a commercial option. It had become a structural necessity of industrial expansion. It was against this backdrop that in 1793, Britain dispatched the most prestigious diplomatic mission in its history to China. Led by Lord Macartney, the delegation brought 600 crates of gifts, astronomical instruments, mechanical devices, the latest artillery, along with a detailed trade proposal. In Macartney's mind, this was straightforward. Two great powers sitting down together, discussing terms, and signing agreements. He assumed any nation would welcome a profitable trade relationship. This was how he understood the world to work. What he failed to see was that this way of thinking simply did not exist in Qianlong's world. The way Qianlong understood international relations had nothing to do with negotiations between equal states. In the Qing court's worldview, there was only the Celestial Empire and the foreign peoples who came to pay their respects. Foreign delegations arrived bearing gifts to seek imperial favor, not to negotiate. Trade was not an exchange between equals. It was an act of imperial generosity, a gift from the emperor to those who came from beyond. This was not arrogance. It was a centuries-old order that had functioned effectively across East Asia for generations. The only thing it had never encountered was an industrial empire. So when the delegation arrived in Beijing to meet Qianlong, the collision became visible in the very first moment. Qianlong required the delegation to perform the kowtow, 3 kneelings and 9 prostrations. This was the ritual that all foreign visitors were expected to perform before the emperor. It was not an insult. It was simply the rule, a part of the established order of the world. But Macartney refused. In his view, kneeling before the Chinese emperor would mean Britain submitting itself as a vassal state. That was a line of national dignity he could not cross. 2 men stood in the same imperial hall, one upholding an order that had lasted 1,000 years, the other defending the dignity of a rising nation-state. no explanation could reach across that divide, because what they were arguing about was not the same thing at all. When the audience ended, Qianlong received the delegation with full imperial honors and composed a reply to King George III. In it was a line that has stayed with historians ever since. The Celestial Empire possesses all things in prolific abundance and lacks no product within its borders. There is therefore no need to import the manufactures of outside barbarians. In Qianlong's mind, this was the most thorough and courteous response he could offer. What he never realized was that when Macartney left carrying that letter, he took with him not only disappointment, but an empire's final patience. After the mission returned empty-handed, Britain did not abandon its goal of opening the Chinese market. It simply changed its method. The East India Company began shipping opium into China, using a different commodity to balance the trade deficit. Silver began flowing in the opposite direction. China's social problems intensified. The root cause of the Opium War was Britain's deliberate pursuit of the opium trade and the imperial expansion logic behind it. But the failed encounter of 1793 had already closed the window of dialogue that might otherwise have existed between the two sides. Industrial civilization was expanding outward. An agrarian empire was still living inside an older world order. The encounter of 1793 was not, at its core, about who was more civilized. It was about who had already entered a new era. The hardest thing is never the negotiation. It is understanding what the other side is actually saying. They both spoke, but the world each of them inhabited was no longer the same.